Patriots and Dalvin Cook, of course, who over the last 4 seasons, as I mentioned, averaged over 110 yards per game. Only Derrick Henry averaged more yards per game during that span. Lucky to be joined now by Mr. Adam Schefter. And Adam, what else can you tell us about how Cook landed on the Jets?
Well, Shay, I think there are a couple of factors to keep in mind here. Number one, Aaron Rodgers made this possible. When he gave back money to the New York Jets, he essentially gave them extra cap room. And with that extra cap room, I think Aaron Rodgers wanted Dalvin Cook to be a part of the New York Jets. He personally reached out to him, expressed that. I think Dalvin Cook prioritized the Jets over all other interested teams, including his hometown Miami Dolphins, because he visited the Jets on Saturday, July 29th. He never seemed to waver off his stance with them, and I don't think he was in any great rush to get a deal done, considering that he had shoulder surgery in February. He still is a week plus away from being able to practice. He's about to become a first-time father any day now, so he wasn't going to practice. There was no need to rush. He could sit back, wait and see if any other team suffered a running back injury that would necessitate paying him even more. He didn't have to do anything right away. He just waited, and then essentially, shortly after Ezekiel Elliott gets his deal done with the New England Patriots and gets about $3 million in base salary, Dalvin Cook sees the value of the deal the Jets are offering and gets that deal done with the Jets in the same day.
So as we talk about the fantasy impact here, Adam, what is the fantasy impact of Dalvin Cook now landing on the Jets as you look at how it pertains to drafting fantasy football teams?
Well, I think he complements Breece Hall, who I still view as the number one back in New York when he's healthy. But Dalvin Cook is a great player, and you want a surplus of running backs, which the Jets now have. They don't have to rush back Breece Hall, and I still think that Breece Hall is on track to be able to play some on opening night against the Buffalo Bills in that Monday night, September 11th game. But they're not going to lean on him heavily early in the year. They're going to ramp him back up slowly coming off that knee injury. And having Dalvin Cook allows them to have two great running backs, both of whom are coming off surgeries, both of whom probably will not be ready for full workloads right away, and they could lean on both backs right away. Now, Dalvin Cook is a huge playmaker. I think he'll be effective in the passing game. But again, Breece Hall will be active and productive, and Dalvin Cook will be active and productive.
Yeah, Adam, I think this Dalvin Cook addition is great, but it hinges on the rest of the running backs understanding the bigger picture. I was there when the Jets drafted Breece Hall in the second round. I know how excited they were to see him cook, right?
Yep.
And for him to get injured, it was devastating. But if Breece Hall, if Michael Carter, if all these running backs feel, you know what, Dalvin Cook is a great player, but we don't need him. Think about the big picture. Because if you're Breece Hall, what did we see with all these running backs? Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor. All these running backs are saying the production, the amount of time served that I gave this organization hasn't helped me physically or financially. Breece Hall has to understand this is about his career, and having Dalvin Cook in that room means the Jets won't feel pressure to put me out there before I'm ready. Breece might feel pressure to get out there and prove that he's back to being himself, but it's a long season. And I grew up in the church, and we used to say, Jesus is the reason for the season. Aaron Rodgers is the reason it could be on and popping in Florham Park. But it is a long season. This is a team that has a roster that could win a Super Bowl right now on paper, but they all need to stay healthy. Having depth in the running back room is paramount for this offense. So they all need to get on board and understand that Dalvin Cook is here for a year. They got it. You're going to split reps the way you split them, and it could benefit everybody else later on.
Yeah, listen, less wear and tread for a back like Breece Hall. So that's a plus if he's looking at it in that regard. But let's also remember this, Kimberly. Dalvin Cook is taking somebody's job. Yeah. So now there's one less running back that they're going to be able to keep. And I don't know who that is, and I don't know who pays the price. They seem to like their rookie running back, Israel Abanikanda, quite a bit. They seem to like Zonovan Knight, who's had an impressive camp. So you wonder, like, could this now, and I'm just raising the question, could this now turn Michael Carter into somebody that they would look to potentially deal for a draft pick? You can't keep every running back in that room. Not when they're as deep as they are at certain positions like pass rusher. So they're going to have some interesting roster decisions because Dalvin Cook just took one more roster spot that would have belonged to somebody who was worthy of that spot.
Yeah.
He took one more roster spot, but for just a season. So, Adam, I'm curious, was that a surprise to you that Dalvin Cook would take just a one-year deal? Was there any teams that were offering more security than that, more of a long-term deal?
No, I think with all these running backs, Zeke Elliott took a one-year deal.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook took a one-year deal. They want to come in. They want to prove their value. They want to try again to hit free agency at the start of the market again when they hope, but nobody's optimistic, that the market for running backs might somehow be better. Now, I don't know how that would happen. It's been a flat, bottomed-out market, but nobody's looking for a long-term deal when the guaranteed money isn't there. If some team is offering a lot of guaranteed money, sure, they'd be open to that. But nobody's getting an offer like the Giants offered $23 million to Saquon Barkley. That's not happening at this time of the year for these types of running backs.
So how did this all go down with Elliott landing on the Patriots in what feels like a short amount of time from when they met?
Yeah, well, again, they met Saturday, July 29th. Same day Dalvin Cook was in New York visiting the Jets. Zeke Elliott was in Foxborough visiting with the Patriots, had dinner that night with Mac Jones, Ramondre Stevenson. And there's been a feeling in New England ever since that day when Ezekiel Elliott took his only free agent visit that he was going to wind up with the Patriots. There were at various points, as Kimberly well knows, where people thought a deal was getting done, only to see Zeke balk. And I think it's a little bit like Dalvin Cook. They're waiting to see if there's another team that steps up and pays more money, if there's another team that suffers a running back injury. It never happened. And so New England was the team that was most interested in Ezekiel Elliott. It's where he ultimately winds up, and he comes in and he compliments Ramondre Stevenson, who does remain as the number one running back in New England. But Zeke can bring them pass protection. He can bring them tough short yardage. He can bring them productivity in the red zone area. So there's a lot of things that he could help with. And I'm sure that he goes in there wanting to prove something to everybody who's questioned him, wondered about him. The Cowboys cut him. I'm sure he comes in now, going back to his college number that he wore at Ohio State, number 15, wanting to play like he did as a Buckeye and to prove to New England and the rest of the NFL that he's a back worth signing, especially with him being a free agent again after this year.
Okay, so when you look at the fantasy impact of this, because again, the NFC East, we've been talking about it all day, one of the more loaded divisions in the NFL. What is the fantasy impact of Ezekiel Elliott being on the Patriots now, especially if he is not the featured back?
Well, I think it boosts his value a little bit because we didn't know exactly where he was going to be playing, even though most people expected it to be in New England. I think Ramondre Stevenson takes a slight hit because there's another running back who can score in the red zone. But Ramondre Stevenson is still an elite running back in my mind. And so if you need a running back in fantasy and he's there, maybe he drops a single round with the arrival of Ezekiel Elliott. But essentially, you still want Ramondre Stevenson on your roster if you can get him at the right spot. Fantasy football is all about value and where you can draft a guy. And at the right spot, Ramondre Stevenson still represents the right value.
And since we're talking fantasy football, here are the top 5 fantasy quarterbacks right now. The defending regular season and Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes taking the top spot, followed by Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and of course, Joe Burrow. Adam Schefter still with us here on First Take, as is Kimberly Martin, Amber Wilson, hello, Shea Cornett. And so let's let fans join in on this discussion. If you want, you can scan that QR code right there and answer this topic on who you think is the top pick as a fantasy quarterback. And so, Adam, that is the question I ask you. If you had to take a quarterback right now in your draft, who are you taking and why?
Well, Shay, go back to that graphic for one moment. Who was the quarterback who had the highest points per game average in 2022? I think
Mahomes.
that would be Jalen Hurts at 25.2. That's more than Patrick Mahomes by 0.6, if my math is accurate. So if Jalen Hurts was the highest graded quarterback by points per game average last year, then I'm going to stick with him this year. Patrick Mahomes may be the best quarterback in the league, is the best quarterback in the league, but Jalen Hurts was the top fantasy quarterback last season, and it would not be a surprise if he were the top fantasy quarterback again this offseason. Kansas City lost a little bit of offensive firepower, not much. Mahomes is still unbelievable, incredible, out of this world, every adjective you could possibly use, but Jalen Hurts is a fantasy monster, and I think still probably is the deserved number one fantasy quarterback pick this year.
See, that graphic threw me for a loop because he was listed number one.
Right. And here's the thing. I never want to disagree with Schefter, because why would you?
Right.
He's a machine.
Right.
He's that dude. But Adam, I would say Patrick, because I would think about who led the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the amount of yards he puts up every year. I get it. When you think about fantasy, you're looking for the guys who are the QBs who are going to be that dual threat, the Josh Allens, the Justin Herberts, the Jalen Hurts, the Justin Fields of it all. But I don't know. I'm just feeling like Patrick Mahomes, that's a guy that I don't want to pick against. So I'm going to go with Patrick.
Kimberly, the question is not who is the best quarterback.
I hear you,
it's
Adam.
who is the top fantasy quarterback
hear you.
pick. And Jalen Hurts runs more than Patrick Mahomes. And because he runs more, he has averaged more from a fantasy perspective. Patrick Mahomes, look, you're debating on the show. Has a chance to rival Tom Brady as the greatest quarterback of all time. No argument there. But we're talking fantasy quarterback just this year. We'll see.
Jalen Hurts has averaged more for a season. With Patrick Mahomes, we're talking about a quarterback that has averaged 23.95 fantasy points per game for 5 seasons as a starter. The Jalen Hurts experience, it was a great one for fantasy owners. It was a season. It looked quite different the season before. Jalen Hurts had the easiest schedule by win percentage in the entire league last year. The Eagles' schedule is nothing like that this season. Patrick Mahomes is still the answer. Adam, in terms of best quarterback in the league and best fantasy quarterback in the league.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.